fresh rubs on 3 different trees, an active wallow 80 yards uphill, tracks heading into the timber. You set up on that bench and you hunt it hard for 2 days, but the bull never comes back. On day 3, a hunter 400 yards deeper into the drainage, into the nasty dark country you marked as just timber on your map, punches his tag. The sign you found was obviously real, you were just in the wrong place to use it. Most hunters treat individual sign like it's the destination. A fresh rub is a spot. A wallow is a spot. Tracks crossing a trail are a spot. They set up on it and wait. But sign really only tells you an elk was there. It doesn't tell you where the elk lives. And most elk hunters never find a bull's core area because they stop reading the mountain before they've seen the whole picture. A bull's core area is the specific piece of terrain where everything he needs exists in the smallest possible space. Once you can identify it on a map and confirm it on the ground, you can stop hunting where elk showed up in sign and start actually hunting where a specific bull decided to live. This episode walks you through the whole process from your laptop to your boots. So I've spent 34 years hunting and guiding western big game across north-facing drainages, high country benches, and the security country that makes most hunters walk right past. And 30 years as a professional strength conditioning and nutrition coach working with athletes at every level, including years competing as an elite athlete myself. Now, all that coaching, hunting, and guiding has taught me that one data point tells you almost nothing. It's the pattern across all of the data points that can tell you everything. One rub is a data point. A system of sign is a bull's address. A core area isn't a waypoint. It's not a coordinate you drop on a map. It's the overlap zone where food, water, bedding, and security terrain all exist within a small radius of each other, close enough that a bull doesn't need to travel too far to meet every daily need. When those 4 things are tight together, a bull's going to stop moving around so much. He's going to stay in that area, and that's what defines a core area, terrain that removes his reason to leave, especially during the early season before the breeding has started, right? Mature bulls operate in a surprisingly small piece of country when the conditions are right. In good habitat, 200 to 400 acres can hold mature bulls for weeks during the early season. And that number matters because it tells you what you're actually looking for. You're not searching across just randomly. You're looking for a specific 200 to 400 acre pocket with everything that's stacked inside of it. There's a distinction worth getting clear here before anything else. A core area is not the same as a home range, right? And it's not the same as a rut area. A bull's home range, the full territory he uses across many seasons, can cover 75 miles or more a lot of times. His core area is the fraction of that range where he actually lives. His rut area is where he goes in late September to breed, may or may not overlap with his core area. A wallow you find covered in sign during September might belong to a bull whose actual core area is drainages away during the early season. So start on your map, not on the mountain. Before you put boots in the field, you're looking for terrain convergence, places where all 4 core area elements exist within maybe a half mile of each other. Just throwing that out there as maybe a core distance. You need dark timber on a north-facing slope for bedding cover, an open park or a burn or a meadow edge adjacent to that timber for feeding, a water feature within reasonable distance like a seep or a creek or maybe a spring or even the drainage bottom, in steep, broken terrain with natural barriers nearby for security and escape cover. When those 4 features all sit within a half mile of each other, you have a real candidate worth investigating. Now open your mapping app and look at the shade and timber layer against the contour lines. North-facing slopes are darker and more heavily timbered, right? Where that dark north-facing timber transitions to an open park or an old burn, that edge is where the elk are going to feed. Find a water feature within a half mile of that edge with steep broken country somewhere above or behind the timber block, and now you've found terrain worth putting your boots on. Mark 2 to 3 of those candidates before the season opens, not just one. If you invest everything in a single location and it doesn't pan out, you're starting from scratch with no time left. Multiple candidates are going to keep you hunting. Some aren't going to hold fresh sign, some will hold sign from previous years, but nothing current, and that's information too. It tells you either the water or the food source changed or the pressure pushed him out. Hey, If you hunt public land elk and you're tired of grinding through random seasons, I built the elk hunting series of ebooks for you. Most hunters don't struggle because they lack effort. They struggle because they lack a system. And that's exactly why I built the elk hunting ebook series as a complete progressive framework for Western elk hunters who are done guessing and ready to hunt with intention. Volume 1 is going to be Foundations and Reality. I reset your mindset and expose the assumptions that quietly wreck seasons. In Volume 2, Finding Elk and Understanding Pressure, you'll learn how elk actually move under pressure so you can anticipate instead of react. In Volume 3, Terrain, Wind, and Position, I break down how to use landscape and thermals to consistently create opportunities. In Volume 4, Calling, Silence, and Pressure, sound becomes a decision tool, not an impulse. In Volume 5, Bow Hunting Execution, we're talking about close range strategy so you can finish your encounters. And in Volume 6, Late Season and Post-Rut, we're talking about how elk shift after the rut and how to adapt when others quit. This is a system built for consistency. This isn't theory. It's a structured system to help you find elk, read country, and make confident decisions every season. Buy each volume individually or bundle them all to save 50% off at backboneunlimited.com. Now, on the ground, you're reading sign as a system, not just collecting individual waypoints, right? Apply the sign evaluation framework to everything you find: age, direction, purpose, pattern, and huntability, in that order. Age is always first, right? Old sign scattered across a wide open area is going to tell you that elk used that terrain at some point in the past. We don't know when. Fresh sign of multiple types concentrated in a small area tells you a bull is using it right now, so don't confuse the two. Plenty of hunters have set up camp on great old sign and waited out a week for elk that haven't been back in months. Rubs are probably your strongest indicator that a specific bull is using an area on a repeating basis in that early season. One rub is a stop along the route. Multiple rubs of similar age concentrated within a couple hundred yards, hitting the same trees again and again, means a bull is spending real time nearby. The tighter those spots cluster, the closer you are to the center of his actual core system. So fresh rubs with shredded bark and wet wood at the base are probably from the last 24 to 48 hours. But your dry, darkened rub scars are going to be older, right? They're irrelevant to us. Reading the age difference across a group of rubs is going to tell you how often he's coming back. Now, beds are probably the center of a core area, right? That's how you know that you're in the bedroom when you find them. An elk bed in security cover sits in heavy timber adjacent to the feeding area with escape terrain above or behind it. That's your core area. A bull doesn't bed randomly. He beds where he can see the threat and disappear into cover if something goes wrong. Fresh beds have disturbed vegetation, hair, and body impressions that haven't filled back in yet. If you find fresh beds in that exact configuration, heavy cover, near the feeding edge, escape route above it, you're standing inside the core area. The bed is where this system anchors, right? Now, tracks confirm pattern over time. Don't just read the freshest set of tracks. Look for multiple generations of tracks in the same location. That means a single fresh track tells you an elk came through today. But 3 sets of tracks at different ages, all entering from the same point, heading the same direction, tells you a bull is running that route probably every day. When you find that kind of repeated directional movement, you're reading the bull's daily routine without even needing a trail camera. You're not just looking at a random crossing. Now, wallows can confirm a system, especially in the early season, but they don't define it, so be careful there. A wallow alone is a stop along the route. A wallow that sits within 200 yards of fresh beds in a concentrated cluster of recent rubs, that could be part of a living system. Bull using a wallow near his beds is using it within his core area. That's a different hunt than setting up on a remote wallow that pulls bulls from across an entire drainage randomly, right? Every core area has a center of gravity to it as well, a specific 200 to 400 yard pocket where all the sign types tend to converge. So finding that pocket is probably the goal above everything else. Now, once you're on the ground, work from the outside in. Start at the feeding edge, the transition between open terrain and the timber. Walk it at first light and look for tracks entering and leaving the timber. The tracks coming out of the timber towards the open area are your feeding tracks. The direction those tracks consistently go when they re-enter the timber is the direction of the bed. Now, as rubs get closer together and beds start appearing adjacent to the feeding edge and near water, you're closing in on the center of your range, right? When you find that spot where rubs, beds, water, and the feeding edge all exist within 200 to 400 yards of each other, I want you to stop. That's something worth marking, right? That's the convergence point, and that is the core. So try not to hunt it immediately, right? We're not just trying to bust in there. We're trying to read it first. Where does the trail leave the bed? Where does it go towards the water? Is there a specific entry point into the security timber that the bull uses on every pass? A gap in the deadfall, maybe a creek crossing or a saddle. You've got to understand that movement before you try to position yourself in it, because the more you know about how he uses the system, the better your setup's going to be. The entry into the core area should probably be your last move, not your first, if at all even, right? We're not walking through it repeatedly to confirm sign, because that's going to destroy the very thing that makes it valuable. You want to pattern it from the outside, from the edges, glass the feeding transitions from a ridge above it. Save the deep entry, if at all, for when you're actually ready to execute or set up on a bull. Now, finding the core area is probably only half the equation. You've got to keep it intact, right? That's probably the other half of the equation. Pressure is probably the fastest way to lose your core area knowledge of a bull. One blown encounter inside that bull's core area, one morning he smells you or hears you or sees movement where there shouldn't be, is probably going to push him out entirely. Not to an adjacent terrain either, probably to a completely different system that he's going to rebuild from scratch somewhere you haven't scouted or might not even find. The core area is really worth protecting, and that means your first entry into it, if you're going to enter it, needs to be perfect. You've got to go in ready to hunt, ready to kill, ready to set up. You're ready to move on a talking bull. You located that area to locate the elk, not necessarily just to push in there and risk it all. Now let's talk about a caveat here. A pressure front is going to slow movement, but that bull is probably still inside that system. A drought or disappearing water sources are going to force his relocation. The water feature is probably often what anchors the core area to a specific piece of terrain. So if that source dries up, your system is going to break here. So because there's folks that talk about pushing and still hunting into bedding areas, I want to touch on this real quickly because it doesn't get said enough. I believe that core areas can hold year after year if they're left intact. The same water source, same north-facing timber, same feeding edge. A bull that used a specific system last September is probably going to return to it this season if he didn't get killed. So identifying and protecting a core area in year one can pay off in year two and year three. But a lot of hunters find sign and they push through there and they blow it out. But the ones who protect what they found hunt better country every season without having to hike another step. You protected that core area, so that can be yours for multiple seasons. Finding sign means elk were there, right? But finding this core area means you understand where a specific bull decided to live and why. And one of those hunts is simply reactive and guessing, which is what most elk hunters do. And the other one is a real plan, and what I hope you'll take away from this video. Now, if this episode made you realize you need a better elk plan this season, don't just watch another video and hope it all comes together. Build your plan right now. If you want to study my full system on your own, start with my elk hunting series of ebooks. If you want daily guidance, accountability, and a place to ask questions as season gets closer, join me on Team Backbone. If you want my eyes on your actual hunt plan, your maps, access, terrain, pressure points, wind, thermals, and strategy, book an elk hunt plan audit with me and I'll help you tighten it up before season. Now, if the missing piece is your body, your legs, your lungs, or your ability to handle mountain miles and a heavy pack, check out my Backbone Unlimited training plans. It's never too late or too early to get started. And if nutrition is where you need more structure, getting leaner, fueling longer days, or building a better in-season food plan, check out my nutrition plans. The hunters who are ready in September are the ones who start tightening their plan right now. So go to backboneunlimited.com, choose the path that fits where you are right now, and I'll help you get started. Thanks for being here. I appreciate each and every one of you. I'll see you in the comments. You know I read and respond to all of them. Until next time, train harder, hunt smarter, and never settle.